Hi everyone, so welcome to my third video. Thanks very much again for all your comments as well through Facebook, and really happy to hear that quite a few of you were enjoying the previous video I made about wavetable. So today I thought I'd share a couple of things so that they're not immediately noticeable about Ableton's Analog. I know a lot of producers, I find that many people I spoke to that hardly ever touch it. They just say that it doesn't sound analog enough, and to a certain extent I agree, but actually you can get some really amazing sounds out of analog, and I'm going to focus on getting pretty aggressive sort of sounds with analog. Think of sort of like distorted type sounds with loads of character, or slightly sort of like UK bass, slightly garagey sort of sounds with plenty of bite. So there's quite a lot that you can actually do with analog anyway. So I've got an example here of a track which has just been working on. It's just like, you know, sort of like a hi-hat kick sort of pattern, slightly sort of housey but quite bassy, as you're about to hear. Right, so what I'll do is I'll just keep these drums going for now, and I've got an instance of analog right here, so obviously at the moment doesn't sound very exciting at all, does it? Let me just bring the level up. And the next thing I'm going to do as well, I don't want the sound to change based on how hard I hit it. I find it a little bit annoying when I'm playing bass sounds. So I'm going to, if you have a look here on the amp one, you can actually set that to 0, right? There you go, so it's loud. Right. And obviously when you do overlapping, then you're going to get a few voices stacked, and the sound is going to get a little bit too loud. So the next thing I'm going to do, go over to the volume section, go to the voices here, and just set that to mono. Right, so the first things first, I'm going to select a square wave, because I think that might work a little bit better to add kind of like crunchiness to the sound. So in order to get a perfect square wave, remember that you have to go to where it says pulse width, and which is basically the difference between the high. It's basically the difference in the cycle of the square, whether it's a perfect square or it's like an uneven square, where one side of the square will be wider than the other, so to speak, right? So it's like an uneven square or like a perfect sort of square. So the pulse width, I'm going to set that to 100, and obviously if we set a pulse width to like a very narrow number, we're going to get a really thin sound. So you probably have heard that in a lot of video games, I suppose, like, well, not a lot, but for those of you that are familiarized with like the 16-bit era or 8-bit era, you probably have heard some of these type of sounds there. Right, so that's a good starting point. So what I'm going to do here, you can see we've got this filter. So I'm going to bring the filter down just to turn this into some sort of bass. Right, and we can apply some envelope movement. You can see this is 4, and you can set it out to 16, being the highest value there. For now, I'm just going to leave it like that. I mean, you can adjust it. So if you want it to be a little bit more subtle, you can see that the filter is open ever so slightly, just at the beginning of the sound. And what we could also do here is we can play around with this drive, and the drive is kind of like a distortion that's built inside the filter. So we can distort the signal before it reaches the filter, and you can see we got these different values. So it goes from 1 to 3, meaning the intensity of the distortion, and we got two different types, which is symmetrical, which the distortion happens on both sides of the waveform, top and bottom of the cycle, and asymmetrical, it only happens to one side. So it's just got a slightly sort of different flavor, right? And then you have to watch out for the level when you play around with this, because otherwise it's going to get quite loud. So I'm going to go for the symmetrical 3. And the trick here as well is that we can actually drive the oscillator signal going into the filter. You can see here on the oscillator we got the volume. You can hear now we're getting quite a nice sort of crunch. Right, as you can hear. And what we can do, for example, is we can add a little bit of resonance. Maybe we can make it sort of like it sounds kind of growly, so it comes in gradually. like that, for example, right? As you can see, basically the filter, not even resonance, basically the resonance is kind of like a feedback. So it fits the filter back to itself. So the higher the resonance, the more sort of feedback it's going to sound like, right? It's going to add a little bit more feedback to the signal. So it's quite interesting things because you can add quite a lot of resonance. And you can have some really sort of growly and crunchy sounds. Right? And of course I can then take another oscillator if I fancy, and you can see that oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 are both routed to filter 1. So I can also set that up to maybe a square, and yeah, so the pulse width is the same, and we can, I don't know, maybe play around with that and play around with the detuning maybe. Right, if you wanted to, I can increase the oscillator to volume. Right, and also I can play maybe around with the octave. You can hear this kind of like really nice or distorted sort of sound. I can of course sort of like play around with different octaves. And obviously changing the drive can also change the character. Or we can make it very gradual, right? So we can actually add quite a low movement for the filter. So it opens fully, but it takes quite a long time. Like that, for example, that can be quite interesting. Or if we don't play around with the resonance, we can get some really nice sort of like roll. Quite fat sounds, and I'm gonna set the key so it's 1, basically mean 100%. So also the filter frequency will move as I play up and down the keyboard, so it's not static. So I'm just gonna bring that up a little bit. There we go, right? So that's pretty fat. And then we can add Unison, of course. We can stack the number of voices and make it detune them ever so slightly. And I'm just going to bring that down because you can hear that the moment that we add Unison, it's going to start clipping like crazy. Right? Or we can just maybe add like a very short snippet of sound like this. Look. And I can maybe add some reverb. Not that much reverb, but that's way too intense. And just play around with that, don't I? Right, so I've got that sort of silly melody there, so you can hear that. So that's just, I just wanted to give you a quick example on some of the features here in Analog. So for example, driving the oscillators quite a lot. And of course you can experiment by blending different sort of waveforms. Like for example, I can use a sawtooth instead of a square. Right, as you can hear, so that can be quite nice. And also don't forget that we have another filter underneath it, right? So I could change the output routing, as you can see here. So at the moment, filter 1 is going to amp 1. If I take that off and I turn amp 2, then the filter 1 is going to go down to filter 2, as you can see here. And that says 100%. And I can turn filter 2 on as well, and I can add a little bit more distortion. And then we can have like a crazily distorted sound if we wanted to. And again, maybe we're just going to take the envelope off, and I'm going to set the filter 2 to follow the movement of the frequency of filter 1. So let's see, I don't know, it might sound too crazy, but let's play. Okay. Cool, right? So you can hear that effect, a really crunchy and distorted type sound that we can get with analog. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any suggestions for future tutorials. Thanks very much for watching.